Okay.
So George Friedrich Handel, one of the greatest composers of all time, born the same year as Bach and the same year as Domenico Scarlatti, and every bit as wonderful a composer as anybody alive in that 18th century. He's known so well by all music lovers for The Messiah, his best loved oratorio. He wrote about 20 of them, and he wrote more than 40 operas as well. He wrote anthems, he wrote odes, he wrote arias, he wrote concerti grossi, and he wrote the water music and the royal fireworks music, two of his most popular orchestral works, and they are wonderful. The story of the water music is it's like a novel. I think we could make a wonderful drama out of it. Queen Anne had died, and the new king of England was the first of the Hanover line, Anne having been the last of the Stuart line. And Handel, after being born in Germany and learning the German art of music and knowing people like Kaiser, the great opera composer, German opera composer, went to Italy when he was in his teens. And in Italy, he went to Rome and Venice and Florence. He just loved being in Italy and drowning himself in the Italian style, the opera style. And he learned how to write Baroque Italian opera there. And he became very well liked wherever he went for his musical talent. When the Elector of Hanover, the same man who later became George I of England, in 1710, I believe it was, wanted to have the royal composer, or the elector's composer at that point. He appointed Handel, and one reason was that he already liked those Italian operas so much. He was a big Italian opera fan. So we come now to him becoming the King of England in 1714, and it's amazing to think about the the pressures he must have felt. There were real differences of opinion still in the 17 teens between the Catholics and the Protestants. He was chosen, in fact, ahead of a lot of Mary's heirs because he was a Protestant, and the politics of the time leaned in that direction. Another problem he had was that he was German. He was German, and some of the people in England were not altogether thrilled about having a German. So you have German versus English, you have Catholic versus Protestant, and maybe the most irritating to him of all, you have his son, the future King George II, who was more outgoing, more mingling with the public. He would eat in public. He would dine with people around him, and King George I didn't want to do that. He had a much more private attitude. But James was really getting more of the people's attention, more of their affection, and George and his advisors knew that he had to do something about it. And one of the things that he did was to arrange for this wonderful, more or less a 2.5 mile water journey from Whitehall to Chelsea. You can walk it in about, I guess, 20-25 minutes, but for a barge to go slowly, it took about 3 hours to take the water route from Whitehall Castle to Chelsea. It's a southerly journey, and what made this so wonderful is that George evidently, and we know some of this from a newspaper article that appeared in print 2 days after the event itself, and it tells us that George ordered Handel to write music for the trip, and that there were about 50 musicians. So the barge had to be roomy, it had to have candlelight, It had to have chairs and music stands, and in those days they wore wigs and they wore uncomfortable clothing, and so it was a festive outdoors event, a musical event. And Handel was up to the task, delighted, I'm sure, to do this. He so enjoyed his composing, and he was so happy with his popularity already then. And this is 1717, in fact, July 17th, 1717, when Handel is only 32 years old, and he writes what we now call the Water Music. And it's scored for different instruments, but mainly the strings and the typical Baroque instruments: oboes, bassoons, horns, trumpets. These are the instruments. And because it was outdoor music, of course, trumpets and horns were ideal. Now, there are three suites as we today order the different movements. We order them in terms of keys. There's a suite in F major, which is the one that we're dealing with today. It's this number 1. There's a number 2 suite in D major. There's a number 3 suite in G major. There are no trumpets in the first suite. Was there a harpsichord on the barge? Some people say no. A few people say yes. It would have accommodated a harpsichord, and it's certainly possible that there was one. The old oboes didn't have metal keys. The old oboes have the finger holes, and players have to either cover or leave open the holes to change the pitches. The old horns did not have valves. The old horns were coils wrapped around, metal tubing wrapped around in a circular way, and you had to change pitch through your mouth's embouchure, your lips positioning, and the pressure you apply, and you could put your hand into the bell opening at the end of the horn and adjust the pitches that way. But the kind of precise chromatic inflections that we have with valved horns, that wasn't possible in the same way. But the sound of these old instruments is precious, it's beautiful, it's magical, and when we hear it played by historical instruments, we get a sense of what Handel heard. But the music is so phenomenal that no matter what you do to it, no matter who plays it, no matter what instruments play it, it rings and zings and communicates the joy of music. And we hear the Berlin Philharmonic doing it, and it's every bit as magnificent as when it's done with an older group. So we have the story of King George wanting to show the public that he could have fun, he could enjoy the outdoors, he could enjoy being part of a procession of barges going down the Thames River in London. And this was one way that he thought he could outdo his own son, who would then become George II. Handel uses what we would call a suite, which is an assemblage of dance tunes and rhythms that are similar to dance, all prefaced by an overture. Now, overtures we think of as opening up operas and even oratorios, but an overture is just a piece that opens up an event. It opens up a musical work that's cyclical, that's several movements long. And here Handel shows us that, like Bach, who was another German-born composer, he knows the French style very, very well. The overture is a French-type overture with a slow opening, and perhaps a dotted rhythm, which was the French way. I think you'll hear that the players give a little extra time to the beginning of a beat and then rush through the end of a beat, and that's the French style. It's majestic. It's derived from the court of Louis XIV, and it was throughout Europe very well liked and very well recognized as one way to perform this. Give it grandeur, give it elegance. And then the fast music is fugal. The fast movement is imitative counterpoint in the fashion of a fugue, and it is a radiant work for the orchestra, strings, oboes, and bassoons. A suite normally will have a number of dances, and the indoor suites of Bach, for instance, tended to have obligatory movements, Allemande, Courant, Sarabanji, but this is a music for outdoors, and Handel crafted it so that the music would carry as well as possible to those people along the banks who might have been able to hear this across the water. One would have needed a good weather night, a good no rain, no wind, and the reports are that it was that way for this great event in July of 1717. The dances that Handel chooses, where we actually have names for them, or sometimes we can surmise what they are from the musical style, include a bourrée, which is a quick dance with a quick upbeat and very lively, jolly type of dance. A minuet, which is a more statelier dance, not too slow, but the minuet is probably the most popular of the dances that lingered on into the time of Mozart and Haydn and Beethoven and beyond. We have an air. An air really is a melodic movement, as in aria. It's a type of instrumental song. And we have hornpipes, and hornpipes are definitely jolly dance music for the out of doors. I think of something, something like Seven Brides for Seven Brothers, the kind of really robust dancing in that musical, Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer musical of many decades ago. But that kind of robust dancing that you also get in some of the Rodgers and Hammerstein shows of that time. Well, the hornpipe it eventually became a sailor's dance, but it wasn't that yet in Handel's time. And so you have that also. And then you have movements that are dance-like, but are much like concerto grosso movements. They are simply named allegro or adagio or slow or fast in English, things like that. So we have in the first suite, depending on what edition people are using, close to a dozen dances. We don't have an autograph score for the water music. That was lost somehow, and all we have are copyists' parts for it. They're in manuscript handwriting, but it's not Handel's handwriting. And the ordering of the dances, there's no consistency in what sources we have, so we cannot be sure. But the general ordering has the overture first, with its slow beginning and fast continuation. It usually we have a D minor slow movement next, and then a series of movements that are mostly in F major, and finishing with this wonderful piece in the manner of a hornpipe. And some of these pieces have been used in commercials on TV. Some have been used in motion picture soundtracks. Some have been used just for radio program theme songs. And most listeners are aware of those particular movements, even if they don't know the whole suite. Now, the suite being one of the main categories of music of the Baroque, what are some of the important issues in Baroque music? One is that after the medieval and the Renaissance eras came to an end, very gradually coming to an end sometime between the late 16th and early 17th century, Baroque music set in, and one of its main characteristics is that it uses harmonies that are major and minor scale based. And we call the kind of harmony that we find, especially in the time of Handel, by the time of Handel, we call it functional harmony, because every chord has a precise purpose in either initiating a phrase or developing a phrase, continuing a phrase, or bringing a phrase to a cadential close. And the bass notes in the Baroque became very, very potent, very powerful. The bass was not just another voice, but the bass was the harmonic foundation. And the bass players on bassoons or later, or trombones, or the harpsichord, or the cello, or the viola da gamba, they had to give the foundation, the cellar, the strong support to all the other voices. But the bass actually determines a lot of the harmony and determines the overall form of the piece. We have a lot of counterpoint in Baroque music. That means that the voices mingle with each other. They penetrate each other. They are striving toward a democracy of sounds, an equality of sounds. We're still going to hear sopranos and basses more clearly than we hear the middle voices, but the idea here with counterpoint, be it freer counterpoint or imitative counterpoint, is that all the voices are working hard together to create one phenomenal whole, which is simultaneously very harmonically logical and harmonically good and resonant and feeling right to the human ear, with not much dissonance thrown in, especially toward the end of a phrase, but having a consonant resolution of things. The idea of concerto, which we even have a little bit in this water music, we have strings, we have winds, we have horns, we have the idea that there's a togetherness, that there's a cone, a width, and a certo, making sound together. And it's in Handel, it's so affable, it's so wonderful how they play together like children having a good time together at a party. There is none of this adversarial quality in these concertos. There is a quality of let's make music together and let's each of us have a voice in it, but it's the totality of the voices coming together that work out. And in the Baroque time, there's also the various feelings of unity. A piece isn't going to be 25 different ideas. A piece is going to have basically a main idea that gets repeated. It can be moving harmonically from one area to another. It can move from one instrument to another. But you always recognize that this is the subject. This is the subject matter of the piece. And a movement in Baroque music does not change its tempo. It doesn't change what it's trying to communicate. It can communicate joviality. It can communicate anger. It can communicate joy. It can communicate jealousy. It can communicate love and ardor. But it doesn't change from moment to moment in terms of what it communicates. And so we have basically one mood, one tempo, one theme. So these are some of the main issues in Baroque music. And in this particular set of movements, it's basically a feeling of let us enjoy life. Let us enjoy the outdoors. Let us enjoy the togetherness. Let us appreciate our ruler, our leader. It's all positive. There's nothing nasty, malicious, unpleasant, unsettling about it. It's really entertainment. It's the entertainment of 1717 along the Thames River in London. What a wonderful day and night that must have been. The stories go that George loved the piece so much that he had the players repeat it 3 times. And I guess a 2-hour trip, you could play certainly a lot of it. Whether they played every last bit of all 3 of these suites, we don't know, but they played a lot, and in 3 hours they could play it 3 times very, very easily. And if the stories are true and the newspaper account is accurate, coming home way late, probably at 2 or so in the morning or so, they returned home from Chelsea to the castle, and they played it 3 more times. The king couldn't get enough. But this is the same king that went to hear the same opera about 20 or more times. He loved opera. He would go to hear the very same opera at the opera house 20 times, which is pretty incredible. But those are the stories, and it's a wonderful conglomeration of characters and stories. 2 main players, King George I and George Friedrich Handel. Born Georg Friedrich Handel, and that's why you see the umlaut sometimes, but he became a naturalized British citizen, and he wanted to have an English name, and he wants us to call him George Friedrich Handel. End of story.
So we will.
If it doesn't get deleted, we're fine. I feel good about that.